Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. Continuing on with our derivation, we have progressed substantially in our understanding of sensorality. We have now found and identified a form of that solution in the general form of all solutions. Right? It is what it is, that is the general form of all solutions, or more specifically all resolutions. And we have a specific solution, sensorality. Right? And what is sensorality? Sensoritality. Right, so now we have it on based it. Sensoritality. But what is soritality? What is soritility? Again, when do we put these different suffix on words, ality versus illity? Right? Quality, right? That's kind of where ality comes from. Well, it literally comes from quality. But you're getting at the quality of something, the general nature, right? Sensorality, the nature of sensing. And we always have senses we spell it with an S. When I turn on my washing machine or I turn on my microwave, it says sensing with an S. That's sensing with a C. Sensorality with an S emerges from sensorality with a C, meaning I can make choices. I can move my hand right now. I can talk to you, but my heart rate is not a conscious choice. My blood pressure is not a conscious choice. So that's sensorality with an S, and your physical automation is sensorality with a C. And so that we've demonstrated how in all physical contexts, range degenerates into base. If you have an excited electron in an orbital, it will degrade, it will send out some information in the form of momentum that will permeate, that will propagate as momentum through mass, because mass creates the space. But we've done enough physics just trying to get to the final solution. But point being is rhythm degenerates into vibration. And so just kind of that's our background. Rhythm is proportional to hype. Right? I have hype points on YouTube. Obviously I don't get any. But what are those? Like if you're hyping somebody up, you're increasing their momentum. When you're at a basketball game and your team's winning and the crowd is electric. That's hype, right? That's sentiment. That's building momentum. More momentum, more hype, more excitement, all proportional. But what is rationality or grationality, right? Rationality, and then put a G in front of it. Grationality, right? Immigration, emigration, migration, integration, interrogation, segregation. The base word is all gation, gationality. What is gationality? It's clear. Clearly it's a base word, but where does it come from, right? I have no idea what is gationality, but it's clear that it is a base. Rationality terminates. Rational numbers terminate, and we've derived from a very profound. I don't even like the word profound, but very visceral, empirical, factual statement that division is kind of your first operator. But we've arrived at the concept of numbers and differentiating numbers, and based on whole and based on fractions. All right, and so we have the derivative of fractions, fracticality or fractionicality. Again, we don't have to use the complete generality all of the time, because at this point it should be completely redundant for me to extend the things and not just use the forms that we already use. But where you have fractions, they either terminate or they don't terminate. And so, right, if they continue on, what is a physical motivation for something to terminate or not to terminate? Because very clearly, like I said, we went through the identity operator where if I lose an arm, I'm still one me. I'm not less me, like I have less mass, but I'm still considered one person. Well, at least by some people. But point being is, what kind of intuition am I getting at with terminating fractions, rational numbers versus irrational numbers, right? Irrational in a general sense is you're not being logical. Irrational means you're not making sense. And so things make sense. The universe is simple. We make it complex. Numbers aren't complex. We are. And we're just inconsistent more so than complex. Because remember, our big theory of the universe is don't die, reproduce, and then think. And so, but termination, right? That's the overarching concept. And then fractions. Can we have a fraction of something? Does that even make sense? You can't have a fraction of a magnetic monopole. You just get or you can't have a fraction of a magnetic dipole. You just get another dipole. So there's that stability of two, But how does that apply to numbers, right? Can we make some sort of physical argument or just extend that physical logic to fractions and say, there's no incomplete systems, or there are incomplete systems, but it's always a part of a bigger system. But what is the physical motivation for differentiating irrational versus rational? Because remember, all of our specific cases of the dynamic limit, pi, the Fibonacci sequence, e, those are all irrational numbers, right? So there's that growth element. It can't be completely symmetric. So that's kind of why, but that's not even a specific or developed enough reason for myself. But it's certainly, that's the next kind of step in our number fields is what is terminationality, what terminates, why is there a physical reason, what is the physical reason to say there is no irrational numbers? Like what completes? Or is that the right question to ask, or am I just flat out wrong and things don't complete because there are no closed systems? How do we develop that more in terms of what is the physical motivation for rational versus irrational? But for termination, right, what terminates, right? To terminate means to end. And so rational numbers terminate. But everything living terminates, right? To die is to terminate, right? So people say, can you prove the afterlife is real? It's like, sure you can. What's afterlife is death. But it might sound like a little wordplay or a little logical gotcha thing. But the point is there are no words to discuss what happens after life, right? We are bounded by dimensionality 3. We can't talk about what happened before or after. And so the completion to the question, what is the afterlife? It is literally death, right? After you live, you die. And there's just simply no words to say anything past that. But we know empirically, physically, that you have impact in your soul, if you want to call it that. It sounds so goofy. You don't really go away. People are sadistic. The universe is not. It's not necessarily positive, but it's not negative either. And so, but everything living dies. It's a physical and logical bound to say the afterlife is death. But death censors information, right? Dead people don't tell you anything. They don't learn anything new. People that aren't alive yet don't learn anything. Don't transmit any information to you. So death is a censor of information at the most, the grandest scale for life. Why do fractions terminate? Again, we just talked about that. But again, just something about asymmetry, irrationality, open. Because like I said, I literally write this down and then rederive it to you. And if I just, for whatever reason, lose my train of thought, have this stuff written down. So that's why I kind of I'll talk about it and then it'll be the same exact thing written down, but I'm looking at the camera. It's not, the reason I do that is to show you that it's from first principle. I literally have to go from a direct empirical observation to a word, and then that word has to be completely consistent with every bit of intuition, and you have to literally go to hell and back, but hell is the entirety of physical ontology, which again literally is the base of all logical ontology anywhere. And so sensorality is to motion what sensorality is to emotion. Sensorality with a C, motion, sensorality with an S, emotion. And right, because people, right, we keep getting back to these slang concepts because slang kind of like extends the logic of grammar or something. But right, if you have motion, right, people say you got that motion. You're a sigma if you got motion. But why do you say that? But what is motion, right? Motion is movement. Movement is displacement of your physical location. And now we have this consideration of inside or outside of a system. How does one move, right? Can you have net movement? Clearly you can, right? So now, logically, I've already solved this. I hate doing this shit that I've already solved because I've already done these things. And so it's like, right, first impressions matter. Your first time deriving something is a lot more poignant than your second time. It's first time deriving sensorality, but third time doing this process, and then second time doing this process publicly, meaning to somebody else. And so all of the novelty is gone. But right, if you have motion, you are based. Right, that's completely well defined in slang. You're cool. It's cool to care. Title for my lecture a while ago. But if you are based, you have motion. And you might giggle and laugh and say, haha, it sounds like a 13-year-old, but it's logically consistent. 2 is not a prime number. I did a short on this. Again, that was the kind of the crux of, well, last episode. Again, numbers don't exist, but what is prime is not, prime number is an adjective in that context. But what is prime? Prime is optimality, all right? If you're preparing for something, if you want to optimize, if you want to have timing is perfect, you prime, you get ready. So the natural context of prime is not to number. But a prime number is an optimal number. Why is it optimal? Because they're real numbers. And so what are real numbers? Tension points, where physical objects make contact with one another. So that's what a point is. But prime is relevant, prime is optimal, prime prepares. And remember, I keep saying 3 is the relevant dynamic. Again, we're bounded in 3. The elementality 3. In mathematics or in physics, dimensionality 3. But 2 is not a prime number because it can't represent a physical system. It has to have a minimum of 3. 3 is our base, our first concept of a number. And then our second prime number is 5, and then our third prime number, and our final prime number is 7. We've proven that extensively, because again, 11, 13, 15, those are iterated numbers, right? A factor is an iteration, right? 15 is literally 1, 5, 13 is literally 1, 3. And so a factor is an iteration. How does chirality relate to viscosity? How does shape relate to flow? What is the best shape? What shape optimizes rolling, right? It's not a perfect sphere, right? And so that the fact that the most to optimize rolling or flow, you don't have a perfect sphere is proof of chirality of this asymmetry inserted into our geometry, or emergent from our geometry to keep systems entropic, to keep them open, to be always to not have closure, to not have completeness, to not have mutual exclusivity. Right, we're all included here, even the selectrons and the dark matter. Kill myself. But compulsory. So now here's another big connection. Compulsorality is obligatory, right? If we expend compulsory, right? Compulsion is obligatory, obligation. But now we've used another form. We've identified another form where the base is sorality. Sensorality. Now it's very clear. Sen is a prefix and sorality is the base. So now we have identified that base being used in another word where we clearly have an axiomatized definition. Compulsorality, right? Compulsory is compulsorality. So now we can just say sensorality is obligatory or obligated. Compulsorality, sensorality, connected base sorality, compulsionality, sensorality. Sensorality is compulsionality. Now we can remove the prefix. Sorality is obligatory, right? And that or, now we can show that consistency, that stability of 2, that's the same or, right? I told you have to logically be able to definitively say this or it's the same shape, same sound, but it's from a different word. And this or is definitely from obligatory. So the or in sorality is the same as the or in obligatory. Sorality is obligatorality. Sorality is torality. Let me check the alphabet again. A, B, C, D, Q, R, S. Natural break in rhythm. T. Because remember, we're doing this in order. Sorality, torality. To the letter in order. Come on, Harvard. I'm still waiting for you guys. I'm sure you're going to pick up the proof tomorrow. And now go check all my timestamps. Did I slow down? Or is it just one avalanche of proof after one avalanche of proof? Oh, pussy ass. Yeah, I still say the N-word. Who cares? Sanitationality, sensoritality. And so now again, we're connecting that. Now we're going back to the base with it in the form of it is what it is. Sensoritality is sanitationality. And so again, now sanitationality, we know what sanitation is, and sanitize, another word based on it. So now we're connecting that base it to another base it, and it's just going to be prefix and suffix, and we're going to be able to remove the base word and create a literally new logical statement. We are literally calculating a question to ask to be answered with what is sensorality. just like when you do it on Jeopardy. Sensoritality sanitizes, sanitizing censors. Censoring sanitizes, sanitizing sensorizes. Sensoritality is amicality, right? This is another one that popped up. I'm not really sure the relation yet, but we know what amicable is, right? It means friendly. But amicable, what is the base of that word? Able, right? Ility, ality, able. That's a complete word. That's functioning completely as a suffix there. And so amic, right? The base is mic, amicality. Amicality, amicable. What is amicable? Friendly. Amicality is micality, or is amicality. Again, another natural definition. Amicality, amicable, then you just put a space, right? That typically a as a prefix means not or no or some sort of form of negation. So amicality, what is micality? And then again, you can still see that mi functions as a prefix like dimension, like a di. So what is micality? Sensoritality is micality. And so now again, we have a clear form of sensorality, which we've put into the right form of solution, and then now paired it to another word that doesn't have a clear definition. But now if we expand micality, then we can, again, expand that into a word form that we already directly know and keep connecting these things. We are very, very close. I only said the N-word one this time. I've been doing good. I don't really care. I say it anyway. But that's just honestly just how I talk. And especially when I'm dunking on people at this level of mathematics, I'm going to speak how I speak. So get fucked. Any censorship of this proof at this point is beyond a lawsuit.